Hanging in. Yeah, just where are you, in New York or in
Yes,
California?
I'm in New York now, finally.
Oh,
I'm finally available. I just wasn't available for the last sessions. I really wanted to be, but I was with
I
my
know you've been
kids and
traveling. No,
all this and kids, and trying to make up
yeah.
the time lost because I haven't spent with them. How about you? How's everything with you?
Uh, you know, um, I'm dealing with the whole eviction stuff with my
Yes. Oh
dog.
gosh.
It's a nightmare. So what can I say?
We finally, I give you a good idea, and we finally evicted the guy, so it is possible.
Did yeah.
It costs a lot of money. You need a great lawyer, it's a
Well,
long-term
I
thing.
have I have a Carter Burden agency,
Uh-huh.
senior abuse, helping me. So
Good, good.
they gave him a
That's
subpoena, but he has until April 5th to leave. But I have to have the dog out by February 15th, and he promised to leave on the 14th and take the dog with him. So he'll take the dog, which is good.
and you think he will follow through with that promise? Hopefully
I hope,
that's
but I need a plan B, but I don't have a plan B. I had my friend Jesse was going to take the dog, but
I
then
remember, yeah, someone else, not him.
then
Yeah.
he had to cancel out because his girlfriend
Oh gosh.
couldn't have it. So I'm looking for plan B. But anyhow,
Yeah, we wish we could take it, but this apartment, oh
yeah,
God, it's so crowded. It's just
yeah,
impossible.
yeah,
There's,
yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
I'm going to start the live video on Facebook.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Um, let's see if I can get this working.
The themes are good, and I'm prepared to talk
Yeah,
about genocide, all of them,
a lot
really.
of there's a lot of good stuff to talk
Yes.
today. And there's some new stuff that just came over the wires. So
Right.
some a lot of new stuff.
Yes.
Okay, so welcome everybody to Zoom Palestine, and we welcome Frank Romano with his expertise. We're talking about inside Israeli politics. Well, he's been inside Israeli jails, so he's got a lot. He has a lot of insider information for us. So, so anyhow, so we'll play our theme song while we wait for people to come on Facebook Live or Zoom. And I love this song. This has become our theme song because Spotify banned it. Blood is
Makes
Palestinian.
oh really, Muhammad Assaf, right.
Yeah,
Spotify banned it. Oh, come on.
yeah,
How ridiculous.
yeah. Well,
Beautiful song.
yeah.
I'm gonna get more light.
Oops. Of course, we have an ad. Goodbye. Now what happened? Let's try it again. At first, it does. You don't succeed. I'm trying to find out why I can't get the volume up on this. Big problem for some reason or other.
I'm back.
Okay, good.
Got a little more light on this.
Seem to increase the volume.
Can you hear it, Jackie?
Can you hear it?
No, I can't.
Oh, here, okay. Yeah, there's and let me get my computer. It seems to be too let's see, system preferences. Well, I don't know why the volume is so low. Let me see if I can check into what is
Okay.
going on with the volume here. Sound. Input. Volume up. Output volume up.
Right.
Oh, all right, now that should work. Hopefully. You can adjust it on the video, but
Yeah, I wonder
what
see
work?
what I can do.
Maybe this is YouTube's way of
Yeah.
getting rid of the song.
Yes. Yes. They could have definitely had an automatic mute.
I've never seen, I've always been able to increase the volume. All right, well, we won't listen to the whole song.
Oh, too bad. I actually haven't heard any of it yet.
Yeah,
But
I can hear
I
it
love
here.
that song.
Yeah,
Okay, you can hear it.
but I don't know why it's not
Got
going
my volume
here.
up.
But anyhow,
See you.
all right, well, we'll start with
Okay.
topic is what's going on inside Israel, and the piece of news that just came up today, actually, which is going to be a basis for what we're going to talk about, because it shows the big divide in Israel.
Yes.
This just came out that according to the directive of what they call the Hannibal Directive, the Hannibal Directive is had once it had been declared by a field officer that when Israeli forces are to open fire on enemy forces that are carrying away an IDF prisoner, so that Israel doesn't want Hamas or doesn't want an enemy to capture a prisoner. So they will kill not only the enemy, but the prisoners.
Wow.
And this is what happened on October 7th, that vehicles that were suspected of removing prisoners from the battlefield were attacked, even at the risk of harming or even killing the abductees themselves. And this is what the Hannibal Directive was. And now it's come out that the Israelis killed a good number of their own on October 7th. So the number the number that they were giving, that Hamas killed 1,700, then it went down to 1,500. Now it's about 1,000, because hundreds were killed by the Israeli IDF, by their tanks. So we're going to look at this tape.
Okay.
And I hope that you can hear it. It's not letting me, not letting me increase it.
The Hannibal doctrine is a very different matter. The argument there, or claim there, is that what the Israelis do is that if it looks like an Israeli soldier or even an Israeli citizen is going to be captured by Hamas or some other terrorist group, to use the Israelis' language to describe those groups, then the IDF will kill those Israelis so that they don't become hostages. And the logic here is that Israelis have such a high regard for human life that if hostages are captured, it will be almost impossible for Israel not to pay an enormous price to get those hostages back. So it's better to surreptitiously kill them, better for the IDF to surreptitiously kill them, rather than have them become hostages. And there is a great deal of evidence that there is this Hannibal doctrine in practice inside of Israel. That's murder. I guess you could call it that. Okay.
I guess you can
I
call it.
guess
Everyone's
call it that,
hedging.
So now we're going to look at another one of these.
Just while we're looking at that, I mean, if you were a father or a mother of any of, or brother, sister, or connected to any of these people, you know, it's still worth even to negotiate. See, they don't want to give up. So they're giving up their lives. They're killing them so they don't have to give up any Palestinians.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
simply atrocious and inhumane.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
So they're going to
Yeah, so
sacrifice these innocent people or even
oh my
soldiers
God,
or whatever for.
by accident,
God.
oh my God, Frank, by accident, I got rid of my browser with all the links. I can't believe it. This is the second time I did it.
Well, you know,
Oh,
if that you know, it's I've copied down all the themes. I don't have links, but I
yeah,
can
all right.
while you're looking for
Okay,
them,
let
I can
me,
address if you want what's
yeah.
happening in Tel Aviv, or we can do that while we're
Why don't you
looking.
do that, Frank?
Yes,
Yeah.
okay,
There's been
gladly.
protests, and I had links to all the protests in Tel Aviv and stuff,
Yes.
the implications. So
And
let me,
people should know that these protests, there's still a minority of protesters.
yeah,
2/3 of Israelis still back the attack and don't really favor a ceasefire. Ceasefire protests are pretty rare still. However, for the first time ever, people are articulating something that for you and I, Jack, we've been saying this for years. They're saying we've got to understand that for a durable peace, for security, we've got to be able to work out something with our neighbors. Before, it's always been we're going to impose ourselves, we're going to overcome. It's not working. It's getting worse. So they're actually saying in these protests, you know, we want to live in peace. We're sick of this, and the only way is to work out a solution with our neighbors, allow them to have their state. They're finally, a lot of people are coming out, even though not a majority of Israelis. And this is sort of a first, really, for them to say these things so in an
yeah,
articulate way. And so many people in Israel are now supporting that approach. These protests, you know, remember, Jack, were especially against the government usurping power of the judiciary more than really working with Palestinians. And then this war came, and now they're waking up to the principle of durable peace only comes through working with your neighbors as opposed to killing them and or separating the Palestinians from Israelis and behind barriers. And they're saying now, these protesters very boldly saying, the keeping the war really does feed the government's policies, because as soon as the war is over, there are going to have to be new elections. The government wants to put them off because the government's not sure that it can win now. It's become very unpopular due to the November 7th situation, and also the continued massacring, and a lot of women, over 10,000 women and children. Almost half of all the fatalities in this Gaza war are just women and children. And so there's a lot of articulating about that, which is relatively new as well. So this is really good. And these protesters are saying we're against the Israeli media because they're saying every day in Israel looks like the 7th of October. They're focusing on the 7th of October and the attack by Hamas and kind of ignoring what happened after that. And that's the propaganda machine again, focusing on, you know, Hamas's incursion into Israel and not on killing of innocent people in Gaza. So there are also these protests are addressing that. And I saw a sign, Jackie, that says, "Imagine peace from the river to the sea," as opposed to saying, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," which is,
yeah,
of course, the Palestinians and all the activists are saying. They're saying, "Imagine peace." So they're saying they're taking from the river to the sea instead of excluding it or making it illegal like it is in Israel. They're saying, "How about peace from the river to the sea?"
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Which is sort
yeah,
of a compromise. These protests are really becoming articulate in that. And with respect to genocide, now they're addressing the government's very weak arguments in front of the recent ICC procedure that was set up by South Africa, in particular focusing on genocide.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And yeah, and the right in and they're attacking, the protesters are attacking the Israeli government's weak arguments are mainly based on propaganda. For instance, they're saying that this is Hamas is fault for everything, and it's not our fault. And they're just focusing on that, which is what the propaganda machine is doing. It's always going back to November 7th, saying Hamas, Hamas, and sort of, ignoring what happened after that. Well, the arguments in front of the ICC, according to, and this is, of course, I think was addressed by the article by Bernard, Levy, what's his last name for the Haaretz article? Gideon Levy talked about that as well, and we can get into that later. We'll talk about the article, Gideon Levy. Anyway, the protests are addressing this genocide and the women and children dying, and the weak arguments that the Israeli lawyers made before the ICC, and it's becoming widespread within, and they really are saying, let's not do the bluff thing anymore. This propaganda machine that has worked in Israel and the United States and pretty much all over the world. We need to address it and counteract these lies and insinuations and these manipulations that the Israeli propaganda machine have succeeded in duping the world for all these years.
Yeah, it's frightening how powerful the Israeli propaganda machine is and how powerful the Israeli lobby is. Okay, thanks, Frank, for your insights. I'm going to now show a little video on this Hannibal director, which this is very terrifying. Certainly, let me see. I've got and I just figured out how to lower.
Israeli army officials following the capture of three.
Let me get.
That was Israeli Colonel Nof Erez claiming the Israeli army had implemented a notorious military doctrine known as the Hannibal Protocol. And reportedly following the protocol, the Israeli army is being accused of killing Israelis and non-Israelis alike during Hamas's surprise attack on October 7. The Hannibal Directive is one of the most controversial orders in the history of the Israeli army. It was drafted in mid-1986 by senior Israeli army officials following the capture of three Israeli soldiers by Lebanon's Hezbollah. Members of the brigade saw their comrades being taken away and therefore did not open fire. The directive was created in response to this incident to ensure that a similar event did not happen again. Standard Israeli army procedure forbids soldiers from firing in the direction of their colleagues, but the Hannibal Directive allows for this order to be suspended. The aim is to prevent Israeli troops from falling into enemy hands in order to leave no scope for negotiation or room for Israeli soldiers to be used as bargaining chips. The Hannibal Directive was shrouded in secrecy by the Israeli army until 2003, when a letter to Haaretz by a military reservist exposed the policy. It sparked global criticism, with experts raising questions about the legality of the procedure and its violations of international laws. The directive was last invoked in 2014, when on August 1st, the Israeli army killed 150 people in one day during its war on Palestine's Gaza, sparking accusations of war crimes against Israel. The policy was supposedly suspended in 2016.
זה היה חניבל המוני, זה היה המון פתחים בגדר ואלפי אנשים על כל סוגי כלי הרכב למיניהם, שהיו גם עם חטופים וגם בלי.
Yasmin Porat, who survived the kibbutz ferry attacks, has also accused the Israeli army of invoking the directive.
ונהרגו בחילופי ירי, דברים שהיה חילופי ירי מאוד מאוד קשים.
זה כוחותינו שניסו לחסל את החוטפים.
The claims were reiterated by British author and journalist Jonathan Cook.
The Hannibal Directive enacted at Kibbutz Be'eri was likely to have been applied as policy towards Israeli civilians captured by Hamas and held hostage in their own homes inside Israel.
The debate around whether Israel used the Hannibal Directive comes after accounts from witnesses indicated the army's role in the high death toll at Kibbutz Be'eri, and reports emerged of Israeli military helicopters using artillery against civilians at the Nova Music Festival. These revelations counter the army's claims that Hamas was responsible for the deaths of approximately 1,200 Israelis.
So in response to this, there are many Israelis who now are in the streets protesting what's going on. And we're going to look at also the Electronic Intifada has an article on it where.
Yeah, let me just add, Jackie, when you go into the West Bank, that's the same. It's linked to the same principle. You know, those signs that say Israeli citizens, it's illegal for them to go into all these different places. And the reason why, again, is that they don't want for two reasons. They don't want the Israelis really to find out the truth. Obviously, we know that, and by experiencing what's going on in the West Bank, because they've been able to, through propaganda, to be able to live in a bubble all this time in Israel, and literally subterfuge the world and their own people to the conditions they've subjected the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. Number two is they don't want the Israelis to be taken hostages, is that it takes a lot of time, money, and effort to free them, and as well as paying a cost for releasing Palestinian prisoners in exchange for them. So this is kind of, it does not surprise me that it looks probable now that there is a Pacific doctrine in the army that it literally encourages the soldiers to kill their own people as well as soldiers for that terrible reason. And it's all about hegemony, getting Palestinians released. They'll do anything not to get Palestinians released at the expense of their own people. Like, it could be women and children are being killed. This is outrageous, but it just conforms to the atrocities that Israel, their mentality, the government seems to be promoting now, especially in Gaza.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's demonstrative of. By the way, welcome Irfan Khan on Facebook Live. It demonstrates the brutality and violence of the Israeli need to survive over all costs, over all odds.
Yeah.
So they'll kill as many people as they feel necessary. I mean, it's today the figure is almost 25,000 people dead. So how many
we realize the idea of an Israeli Jewish homeland is not a bad idea, as long as they don't call it a Jewish state, excluding all those in that state that are not Jewish. But then they've gone over the top. It's become a mental thing. What's the word? Dramatically twisted in the survival. Yes, but to this extent, it becomes a twisted, dark policy that has taken over here in Israel, and they need to be aware of it and then pull back on it and discipline these people that are applying such standards.
Yeah. And this is why they bomb hospitals. Here, Ghassan Abu Sitta explains why they are bombing hospitals, which seems to be, which is an international crime, but they're going ahead anyway. And we're going to, so we're seeing the protests within Israel. And here's a good article about Haaretz. So we're going to look first at the left policies and politics in Israel, and then listen to then go over the current situation of the far right government. So this is a very good article in Haaretz that hundreds of Israelis out protesting the war, and the police had originally banned the anti-war demonstration because the demonstration is, that anybody speaking against the Gaza war has been vilified. But now the people, it's reached the tipping point that people are now not afraid anymore to speak up.
Let me just interject here. It took the protesters' lawyers. They had to go to court to overcome the ban, and the court agreed that they had the right. And Israel, as the greatest democracy in the world, freedom of speech, freedom of association, it flies in the face again with this propaganda. With even now within their own people not allowing any type of freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of assembly.
So And the opinion says that Democrats must get ready for the civil war. That this is not going to be an easy situation. So let's listen to this article by Haaretz, because it gives us some of the good background information. We can listen to it.
Hundreds of Israelis protest against Gaza war after police reversed ban. By Liza Rozovsky. Hundreds took part in the demonstration in the northern Israeli city of Haifa, which saw police arrest a protester and confiscate signs from others. Hundreds of anti-war protesters gathered in Haifa on Saturday for a demonstration organized by a coalition of civil society groups called the Partnership for Peace. The police initially banned the protest, citing security concerns, but reversed their decision after an appeal against it was submitted to the Supreme Court by the left-wing Arab Jewish Party Hadash and the Israeli Association for Civil Rights. They set the maximum attendance at 700 people. The demonstration was held at Haifa's Paris Square, which was surrounded by police barriers, with dozens of police and border police officers stationed in the area. Police arrested one protester carrying a sign reading "Israel and the U.S. will murder together." They said he was taken for interrogation because he could have disturbed public order by waving signs causing incitement. Some protesters said that several signs reading "End the Massacre in Gaza" were taken and destroyed. In response, demonstrators chanted, "No more political police, no more fascist state." The spokesman for the police's coastal district, Ari Daron, said the signs that were seized had been causing incitement and agitation. Furthermore, confiscated because displaying them violated the agreement between the protesters and the police. Alina Mashia, one of the demonstrators, said police confiscated a sign from her during the demonstration and said they would return it after it ended. "You can take the signs away from us, but you can't take away the idea behind them," one of the protest leaders said in response to such incidents. Demonstrators carried signs with anti-war slogans, "No to war," "All for all," a plea for a hostage deal, and "Stop the genocide." A protest installation in the form of a plane dropping bombs and inscribed with the word "revenge" was brought by demonstrators. Some protesters and organizers said that the significant police presence had made them concerned ahead of the demonstration. "Our only concerns are not over the citizens or the counter-protesters, but the police," said activist Guy Dan, a member of Hadash. "Don't think for a second that they're here to protect us." In a speech to the crowd, Dan spoke about the initial police ban on holding the protest. "This is just an illustration of the absurd situation reached by the only democracy in the Middle East every time," she said. "We must not, under any circumstances, not even for a second, mistakenly think that we have any rights that can't be revoked by a fascist's desire to prosecute of the desire of a fascist to sue. We must fight against fascism and against the ideology that brought us this disaster, the disasters that will follow." A speech was also given by Mihal Brody-Berkut of the group The Mother's Cry, founded by mothers of soldiers fighting in Gaza. She referenced a video in which a member of Hamas is seen giving a glass of water to an Israeli child in one of the border communities attacked on October 7th. In fact, he had murdered his parents a few minutes before, she said, but part of the public was exposed only to a video intended to show the kindness of Hamas and is convinced that Hamas acted humanely and according to Islamic law, while another part of the public was exposed to the murder of the child's parents and is shocked by the cruelty of Hamas. Both sides are fed by the media, which conveys pieces of reality to them in a partial and biased way. It's always been like that, and it intensified a lot during this period. Hadash chairman Issam Makul said the anti-war protest, the city's first substantial one since the war began, represented a turning point in the fight against the war. There has been an attempt to silence all the forces opposed to the war and to artificially create consensus. It's not the truth. In his own speech, Hadash Secretary General Amjad Shabata said, "There is a fight that could not be more just, ending the war immediately." He said the protesters were there to raise the cry of all the genuine peace activists, of the bereaved families in the Gaza border communities, of the mothers whose sons have been sent to be killed in this needless war.
Wow, that's interesting.
Powerful.
So that's
Powerful.
very hopeful, actually. And we're going to let's see if I can scroll up.
It's interesting they interjected, and trying to counter this propaganda that people buy into, especially
Right.
Americans, the greatest democracy in the Middle East. And
Yeah,
it's so important that people
Yeah.
start reconditioning
right.
against this propaganda to the truth.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Israel has
And,
been very successful. Why do they keep doing these things, saying these things? Greatest democracy, and saying any critique of Israel is anti-Semitic? Because it worked.
Yeah.
Average American still buys into it. It worked, and now I think with these activists reiterating how what a travesty it is. These slogans that have been used with effectiveness up until now needs to be questioned, and then we need to reprogram ourselves and get to the people as well that these have been lies and just propagandic devices.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I wanted to play, I was going to play Amy Goodman.
Okay.
I had Israeli conscientious objector on, and his interview was so touching and wonderful that now let me see, with Israeli conscientious objector. This was 3 months ago, but this was yesterday that she had him on. Israeli conscientious objector.
Sounds like he's a very courageous person
Yeah,
to
yeah.
like breaking the silence, ex-soldiers
Yeah.
and combatants for peace in
like
Israel,
that.
ex-soldiers. Yeah.
This
I
is
don't hear her yet. Maybe it's going to happen.
no, it's
Muted. Okay.
yeah, I have it muted. I'm looking for
Sure.
the damn it. God. I'm trying to find the one that was on yesterday. I think Amy Goodman.
It wasn't the one that
now,
wasn't
it
the one
was,
on top, I guess. No, it was
what
a
was
different one.
yesterday was January 19th.
That was 3
Today
months
is the
ago there.
20th. I
Right.
think it was the
Got it.
19th. Yeah, I think it was January 19th. Here it is. That's it.
There we go.
Okay, let me.
The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel is continuing its attacks across the Gaza Strip from the north to the south. The number of Palestinian casualties continues to soar. Over the last 24 hours, at least 142 Palestinians were killed in Gaza, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. Nearly 25,000 Palestinians have been killed over the past 3 months, 10,000 of them children. Thousands of others missing under the rubble, presumed dead, making Israel's assault one of the deadliest, most destructive military campaigns in recent history. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has again rejected calls to scale back Israel's military assault on Gaza or take steps towards the establishment of a Palestinian state. In a nationally broadcast news conference, Netanyahu vowed to press ahead with the offensive until what he called a decisive victory over Hamas. As Netanyahu vows to continue Israel's assault on Gaza, we turn now to the first Israeli to refuse mandatory military service since Israel's offensive began over 3 months ago. Tal Mitnick is an 18-year-old conscientious objector in Israel. Last month, he announced he would refuse military service, saying, quote, "I refuse to take part in a war of revenge." He was sentenced to 30 days in a military prison, was just released yesterday morning. Tal Mitnick is joining us now from a studio in Tel Aviv. Tal, welcome to Democracy Now! Can you talk about why you are refusing?
Thank you for having me on. I'm refusing because, like I said, I refuse to take part in this revenge war. I'm refusing because I want to make a statement about how we need to conduct ourselves in this land. I feel like there's too much violence here. There's too much revenge and talk about this side or that side. And we need to talk about how we need to go forward in a future of coexistence where both Israelis and Palestinians can live together and live with security and peace.
So talk about what exactly this means. How did you make this known? Talk about where you served time in prison. And is this just a brief period of days before you're sent back to prison?
Yes, I got sentenced for 30 days for my first sentencing, and I got another draft order for Monday morning, which means I have to get drafted on Monday morning, where I will go and refuse service once again and probably get sentenced again. And this will happen over and over until someone gives up, until the army gives me an exemption.
So talk about the response of your friends, your family. And I was also just wondering, you're an Israeli, but you have an American accent. Are you American as well?
My parents immigrated from the US, and we spoke English at home, but I'm Israeli and American, yes.
So
The friends and family response, yeah.
Go ahead.
My friends and family response was thankfully mostly very understanding, because people that know me and people that talk to me know that I come from a good place of non-violence and coexistence. I feel like the people that got to talk to me, also inside military prison, a lot of them Ben-Gvir supporters, they support killing all Arabs. When they got to know me before they knew my political opinions, they understood. They understood that there are people that don't support this. Sorry, I can hear myself twice.
If you can possibly blank that out, because we're not sure how to fix that right now, but just continue to talk, because we don't hear you twice, but we do hear you very clearly. Can you talk about your time in prison, and where are you being held?
Yeah. So I'm being held in a military prison where other soldiers that have committed crimes inside the military and got sentenced to military prison are also being held. It's not a fun experience, but it's also not the worst experience imaginable. It's not like the experience that Palestinian prisoners are being held under in the West Bank or inside Israel. Yeah, it's very strict timing, very strict about what you're allowed to do and when. But this is something that I'm willing to do to make an impact.
I'm wondering if you feel the climate is changing among Israelis, and also what Israelis see about what's happening in Gaza. I mean, we just reported, we're talking about now close to 25,000 Palestinians killed, over 10,000 children, over 7,000 women, many believed to be dead in the rubble. We don't even know that count. If you watch something like Al Jazeera, or you watch other media, since there are only Palestinian journalists there on the ground, you see endless pictures of carnage, of horror, of babies being pulled out of the rubble, dead or alive. What do you see on Israeli TV? We're talking about people who are just 15 minutes away from Gaza.
So actually inside prison, the only source of news that we got was one newspaper called Israel Hayom. And every day on the newspaper, there will be pictures of the soldiers that died. And I remember feeling like I feel sad, very sad for the soldiers and the families that have to take this great burden of losing someone close to them. But I know that while seeing soldiers dying, I know that this means that there are much more Palestinian civilians dying, which we don't see in the newspaper.
Who else are you serving time with in that prison? Who else is there?
Sadly, a lot of the other people there they are deserters, which means that they served time in the military, and then at some point, for some reason, they went back home and did not come back. Most of these people desert because of socioeconomic reasons. If it's having to take care of their siblings, or go work for their family. And when they come back and turn themselves in, we're now seeing a very heavy sentencing of those deserters as a part of the fascist persecution and the fog of war. People that went to work for 3 months to feed their family are now being sentenced to half a year in military prison.
Can you talk about the overall anti-war movement, if there is one in Israel. I mean, there were massive protests, up to 1 million people on the streets, which is massive for Israel, around the Netanyahu wanting to gut the power of the judiciary. Of course, he is under charges himself, and that would help him remain out of prison. But at that point, many reservists said they would not serve in the military. Everything changed after October 7th, Hamas attack on southern Israel. If you can talk about why that did not change you, and how large is the anti-war movement, and do you feel it's growing?
I feel like after the horrendous attack of October 7th against Israeli civilians, there was a very important conception that was broken in Israeli society. The conception that we can live with the siege and with the occupation and not feel it. Now, when that conception is broken, we have a vacuum. And there are two ideas that are trying to pull people. One idea that the right is offering, which is we can't live with occupation, we can't live with siege. This means we need to wipe all of them out. And the other idea, the moderate one, the one that makes sense, is that we can't live with occupation, we can't live with siege, we need to step forward for peace. Inside military prison, I got asked a lot, what do you think? We should just stop the war and put our hands up and not do anything? And I would answer, no, we need to keep fighting. We need to keep fighting for a just future. We need to stop the physical fighting between us, and we need to very, very aggressively push for a better future.
Hearing your response to Prime Minister Netanyahu once again saying, from the river to the sea.
Welcome,
When
Shamar.
Palestinian advocates
Shamar.
and their allies talk about from the river to the sea, the response of the Israeli government has been, that means they're for the genocide of Jews because they don't want Jews to be there, the government says. Now you have Netanyahu saying, not that this hasn't been said before by Likud, but from the river to the sea, Israel must control. Your response to that, Tal. And if you can talk about the word occupation, because in the US media also, there is rarely that word used, that Israel occupies the West Bank and Gaza.
The term from the river to the sea is very controversial inside of Israel. And I feel like some people that use it, there are people that use it that mean the genocide of Jews inside Israel. But just the term itself, I feel like, does not mean a genocide of Jews. It means freedom for all Palestinians from the river to the sea. When Benjamin Netanyahu uses this term, it does not mean freedom for all from the river to the sea. It means oppression of Palestinians. And it means Jewish supremacy from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea.
Finally, Tal, I'm wondering your response to Jews around the world, particularly here in the United States, like Jewish Voice for Peace, these massive protests that have been held from Grand Central Station to shutting down the bridges and the tunnels from New York to highways in California, saying we want a ceasefire now. How do you respond to that? And your final message to other 18-year-old Israelis?
These protests are amazing. These organizations like Jewish Voices for Peace and If Not Now do incredible work. And I support the continuation of these protests all around the world. And a message to other people my age, other kids, I feel like it's important to know that we have a voice. I used to think that that talking to people is all we could do, but we can change, and people want to hear what we have to say because we're the future. And this is, yeah, we're the future, and we can change.
And finally, might you spend months, more than a year in jail if you keep saying no to military service, since Netanyahu says this will go on for more than a year?
because there's no policy set for jailing conscientious objectors, I don't really know how much time I'll spend in prison, but it could be months.
Talmetnik, 18-year-old Israeli activist known as a refusenik. He's refused mandatory military service in the Israeli army, the first conscientious objector in Israel since the Israeli assault on Gaza began over 100 days ago. He's just sentenced to 30 days in prison, which he served for refusing to enlist, was released a few days ago, then will be called up again and says he will refuse again.
Wow, how inspiring that was.
Yes.
A young guy, young kid like that. It's just so wonderful. So now we've looked at the left in Israel. So let's see what's going on the right. And here's Netanyahu refusing the two-state solution.
אם זה,
Yes.
מדינת ישראל חייבת לשלוט ביטחונית על כל החפץ הערבית הזה. זה תנאי הכרחי.
It's the
זה
necessary
מתנגש
condition.
עם רעיון הריבונות, מה לעשות? את האמת הזאת
What can
אני
you do?
אומר לידידינו
I
האמריקאים.
tell this truth to our American friends that also stop the attempt to impose a reality that would harm Israeli security. The Prime Minister of Israel needs to be capable of saying no to our friends, saying no when necessary, and saying yes when possible. Now I say simply and honestly, victory will take many more months, but we are determined to achieve it. So
Jackie, what do you think he's really saying about this? We've got to maintain security in Gaza. What do you think he's really saying by that?
well, that they're not going to leave Gaza, that they're going to continue to occupy Gaza.
It's
and
going to be like the West Bank, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the PA, which I worked for a while on the complaint to the ICC, and then I separated when I realized they weren't going to file it, and filed my own complaint against Netanyahu, Gantz, Lieberman, Trump, and Obama, has been a proxy. They're not even considering bringing in Abu Mazen and the PA to control Gaza. It's going to be a direct control by Israel. To me, that says a lot of things, and including if Israel is going to control, not just for security, it's going to control the place, they're going to bring back settlers. They're going to settle. They're going to take the land. That, to me, they're not going to have any buffer. I mean, sometimes the PA opposes this, and there's a bit of a control on settlement, but not much. Israel is consuming all of the West Bank, but here would be direct control of Gaza, and the age-old strategy of Israel has always been allow the settlements. That's what they always did ever since the Nakba. More settlements deep into Palestinian territory, and then even if they haven't been authorized, we'll go protect them and ratify them, and then protect them. Then we have the excuse for the soldiers being there forever, because we're protecting Israeli Jews inside the settlements, and I think they're going to carry that on in Gaza.
Yeah. Well, they're definitely not going to, and they want a huge area next to the border of Israel to be like a dead zone, a military zone.
Yes.
So this is going to, they're not going to leave Gaza, and they're going to expand into the and annex the West Bank. So this is what the far right's vision is, and this is a very good article in the Haaretz explaining what you need to know about. And I just had the article on what you need to know about the far right government and what they're up to. Shit, excuse my language. I have the article, and then it keeps.
While you're looking for it, a member of the State Department recently said you got to have a two-state if we're going to have security.
Right.
Which flies in the face of what Netanyahu just said.
Yeah, they don't want a two-state solution. They want one state where basically Palestine is purged of Palestinians, except the few that they need to work as slaves for them. All right, here's the article.
Far right Israel explain what you need to know about Netanyahu's radical new government. To end the unremitting cycle of elections, Benjamin Netanyahu unleashed far-right forces that will hold unprecedented power in the most religious, right-wing coalition in Israel's history. Haaretz explains the key issues, profiles the extremists, and analyzes how far this radical coalition could go. The incomprehensible is fact. The hallucination is reality. Haaretz columnist Yossi Verder After 4 knife-edge elections left Israel paralyzed and polarized, it was 5th time lucky for Benjamin Netanyahu. The country's longest-serving prime minister secured his return to power with a relentless election campaign from the unfamiliarity of the opposition, and ended up delivering the most extreme right-wing, racist, homophobic, and theocratic coalition in Israel's history. With a 64-seat majority in the 120-seat Knesset, Netanyahu is now afforded a stability that eluded both his short-lived 2020 to 2021 coalition with Benny Gantz and the outgoing heterogeneous government of change, headed by Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid. Netanyahu's emerging government comprises his own now subservient Likud party, his stalwart ultra-Orthodox allies, and a far-right faction that won a shocking 500,000 votes. For the first time in Israel's history, a wide majority of the coalition is Orthodox or ultra-Orthodox. Out of its 64 members, only 9 are women. The ultra-Orthodox camp comprises longtime loyalists. Shus leader Ari Deri, the closest thing that the guarded Netanyahu has to a deputy, and United Torah Judaism, under the leadership of Yitzhak Goldknopf. Then there are the emboldened extremists. With an explicit imprimatur from Netanyahu himself, Religious Zionism's joint ticket of 3 far-right parties won a historic haul of 14 seats and an unprecedented grasp on power. Religious Zionism party head Bezalel Smotrich calls human rights groups an existential threat to Israel's existence. Itamar Ben-Gvir, the pyromaniac protege of extremist Rabbi Meir Kahane, whose violent anti-Arab racism led his party to be banned in both the U.S. and Israel, heads the Otzma Yehudit Jewish Power faction. Avi Maoz, a once fringe ultra-conservative whose known party specializes in anti-LGBTQ activism, will work within the Prime Minister's Office on Education Policy, among a plethora of positions. They are now slated to control the economy, the police, the civil administration of the occupied Palestinian territories, and key aspects of Israel's education system. Haaretz explains the forthcoming assault on Israel's shrinking democratic space, on human rights for Palestinians and minorities, and the scorched earth approach toward Jews around the world, and its fallout at home, in the Middle East and beyond.
So this is what we
Wow.
have to look forward to.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the U.S. state spokesman, it was with Matthew Miller. Again, what this is, and this is falls into the no two-state solution. It's really like Giffer and all these other fanatics on the right in the Israeli Likud government. It's we really are going to form a Jewish region, and the objective is clear, and they're not even hiding it. We
Yeah.
want all the non-Jews out, and unless you collaborate. And so he said, and again, a State Department representative said, there's no way to solve this long-term challenge to provide lasting security without the establishment of a Palestinian state. And then recently, Mr. Paul resigned as a state. Become a member of the State Department. You have to pass the Foreign Service test. It's a cushy job for life. He resigned, saying the United States is not using its leverage. Here we are contributing by sending arms and money to Israel to continue the massacre, and we're not even advocating a ceasefire. We could use that leverage to say no more arms, no more money, unless you at least have a ceasefire. Not to mention, stop the massacre, stop targeting civilians. We could use, and he said, since we're not using it as leverage, and the State Department seems to continue this advocating and supporting Israel in this war effort, along, of course, with Biden, he resigned.
Yeah.
He resigned. So this was very, very powerful, but it's hypocritical. Biden keeps saying, well, the idea is a two-state solution. It's completely hypocritical because he doesn't use anything for leverage to even advocate for the possibility of it. He continues supporting Israel that takes more and more land from Palestinians in the West Bank, making it far more difficult every day to form a Palestinian state, not to mention what's happening in Gaza. Yet he does that simply, I think it's all political. He just wants to appease the leftists a little bit and say, well, I'm making some ideas, but I'm toward a peaceful solution. But in reality, he really wants to continue showing he's advocating Israel all the way, because as many political leaders get money from Israel. So it's a selfish, political, selfish, and cowardly approach by many of our politicians that are literally been bribed. These are bribes. We're getting thousands, millions of dollars from the Israeli lobby and Israeli sources so that we approve everything given to Israel, arms and weapons. And what were you doing that for? To maintain power, to be reelected, and the heck with the consequences, such as the killing of 10,000, children and 7,000 women in Gaza, which is continuing every day.
Biden is the largest receiver of AIPAC funds of any politician. He gets more money from AIPAC,
Yes.
so he's been bought.
He's been bought.
Very discouraged with
Very
him.
discouraging.
Disgusted
Yes,
by him.
me too.
Now, the other thing we have to look to in the future
Okay.
is that if Netanyahu does have to leave office, that there's a real possibility of Ben Gvir's party taking over. And they have a vision of what they call Greater Israel, which
Yes.
they say is the ancient Israeli kingdom, which is actually not true. But in their propaganda, Zionist propaganda, that goes Mediterranean across the Jordan River, incorporates Jordan, incorporates Syria, incorporates part of Saudi
Yes.
Arabia, and part of Iraq up to the Tigris River. And they say that will be fine because on the other side of the Tigris are the Kurds, who are friendly with them.
Yes.
And let them take over. So they actually have this delusional idea of Greater Israel, and they feel they must do this because they are surrounded by dangerous enemies, and the only way they can survive is basically using their nuclear weapons and getting rid of everybody. And they threatened to turn Beirut into Gaza, and get rid of Hezbollah. So it's a very dangerous, fanatical vision that they seem to be implementing little by little, starting with the West Bank.
Right.
But I was having dinner with a Jewish friend of mine who I love dearly, and the other night, and he said to me, why don't the other Arab countries take the Palestinians? And I'm like, why should they? Why should the Palestinians leave? They've been there for thousands of years. And he said, well, other people were there thousands of years. I said, yeah, there were Jews there too, but they lived in harmony and sharing everything together.
Yes, of course.
It's like so discouraging that you can't talk about anything with anybody. And
yes, it is discouraging.
What's been going on with me and Westbeth is that now the Jewish people in the building are spreading rumors around me that I'm an anti-Semite. And they claim that I posted a swastika on my Facebook, and that George Kaminsky, who's a big shot politician who hates me in the building, was upset about it, and so I took it down. And this is a total, absolute lie.
Of course, yeah.
I posted something about Israel, Gaza, and he wrote something that it was disgusting or whatever. This was months ago, in the beginning of the war,
right.
And he's big in the Democratic Party in the village.
Right, but again, it's that anti-Semite. Anyone protesting what Israel is doing, it's been used over and over again, and people still believe it, including people, and even educated people buy into this, criticize Israel or criticize that any of their policies. It means you're an anti-Semite. It means you're anti-Jew, and it's worked. And he's using this age-old, fallacious policy that Israel uses. And then finally, I think they're being called out on it. But the first thing you talked about, though, is even more serious, where people are saying, why don't Palestinians live elsewhere? Well, it so happens that under Article 7 of the Rome Statute, it's a crime against humanity to deport or forcibly transfer the population, which has been happening already in the West Bank, and is what some of the leaders like Smotrich, the finance minister in Israel, says Palestinians should leave Gaza and make way for Israelis who could make the desert bloom. And then Gvir, that far-right politician, has been encouraging very strongly that that's the solution. Get all the Gazans out and send them to somewhere else. But it's a violation, obviously, of ICC, but it's also totally unrealistic, just the way you said it, Jackie, that people have been living here for thousands of years, hundreds of years, and this is their home. And they, first of all, to be transferred somewhere else, which is not their homeland, it's like uprooting people from where they've been. This is their home. And they cultivate the land. They'll be uprooted and like a fish out of water somewhere else. And a lot of people, to be able to exist in a foreign country, need to have funds, and they don't have funds. Most Palestinians are almost under poverty level. So it's totally unrealistic to say that, but they're not only flaunting it, the leaders of Israel are flaunting this approach, which is in violation. It also for other things, the genocide issues. There have been also genocide language, like some cabinet ministers have been saying, let's just nuke them. Or the first thing we've got to do is going to be a worse Nakba than 1948, what's happening in Gaza. In other words, and they're saying the only solution is to kill all the people in Palestine. Now they're saying it even in the news, which means they are saying we have committed genocide. We're committing genocide now, and will continue commit genocide in the future. And what they're doing is flaunting the ICC and saying we have lived with impunity. ICC, the International Criminal Court, has done nothing against us. It's done nothing. With Putin, he only, he invaded Ukraine and committed atrocities and already has an arrest warrant. Whereas Netanyahu, Gantz, Lieberman, and with his accomplices, Trump and Obama, and now I'm going to add Biden to my complaint, a 130-page complaint before the ICC, are living with impunity. So they're just flaunting it, saying we don't care. We can say this publicly. We are actually committing genocide. This is genocide language, and we don't care because we know the ICC is going to do nothing against us. Nothing.
I agree, Frank. It's discouraging, but what was encouraging was listening to that 18-year-old conscientious lecturer. And we can only hope that and I have friends in Israel, and I've been in touch with them, and I've heard since this war began, and they're very upset, very against the war, but the other, I think this Hannibal doctrine, the revelation that a lot of the people who were killed on October 7th were killed by the IDF.
Right.
A lot of the also that they refused to have a ceasefire, release the hostages. So all those families are furious with Netanyahu. Now a lot of people who family members and survivors of that kibbutz and the music festival, where it turns out the 70 cars that were blown up were not burned by Hamas, and that was listed as one of Hamas's crimes, where they burned like 70 or almost 100 cars, but they were bombed by Israeli tanks and aircraft. So that a large number of the dead on October 7th were the result of Israeli fire, not Hamas. And Hamas's policy, and this was in one of the articles that I deleted by accident, but Hamas's policy was military, was to capture soldiers and hostage, to keep us hostage. So most of the hostages that they were seeking after were military, and they invaded precision areas that were military areas. The Electronic Intifada has a good podcast on that. Ali Abraham, I think is his name, who was able to discuss this in great depth with a lot of new details. There's a lot of new details that's coming up that are really shocking, very shocking.
It's interesting. I've been accused of many things in my life. I've been trashed, and as you've received death threats. I know you have, and threats, and we've been attacked by our policies. But it's interesting that a criminal mind often imputes his or her crimes to others because it's a way of they identify with it, and they don't like that criminal tendency they have, and they accuse others of the crimes they're committing. And this is sort of the pathological problem with this far right fanatic government. They're imputing these crimes, atrocities to the enemy, because they have been committing them. And now I think people are waking up to the fact that this Israeli fascist government is a terrorist government like the United States in many ways. But before we clock out here, it's important to people know, and I think Gideon Levy's article and others have been addressing why Netanyahu is so adamant to continue the war and no ceasefire. And the reality is, in my estimation, that he knows clearly that after the war is over, there will be new elections. And many people are upset with Netanyahu, even his own constituents. They could very well, in fact, contrary to sort of what you said before, it's possible that guy, what's his name, a Givri guy, that really fanatic guy on the right's been pro-Jewish state, only Jews, and he's in the cabinet now. I'm not sure he'll take over because of this growing, including with Bibi's constituents against him. So I think he's trying to hold on as long as he can and say, well, we've got to continue fighting, no ceasefire, because he knows that when this stops, they'll have to have new elections, and I think he wants to put them off as long as he can. So he wants to be able to get the Hamas leaders, so it shows that he's a hero, and maybe people's adamancy, especially the Hannibal thing, that'll wear off. People forget it, and then he'll be back in power. People forget about it. He's trying to put it up at the expense of thousands of innocent people.
I think part of the problem is information. That's why it's so important to keep the pressure on the media. I notice CNN now, MSNBC are becoming a little more, and the New York Times becoming a little more critical of Israel, slowly. So I think that getting information out, and Brooklyn for Peace is working on a leaflet with information on the Gaza war and background, and being able to refute all the tropes, the Israeli propaganda machine. So I think that's the task for all of us. To keep informing people. So thanks, everybody. Our time is up. Thank you, everybody. There's 6 people on Facebook Live, which is great. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Frank, for your insights. And let's keep up our work, and let me know what the next protest is you're going to. I wanted to go to the one at the Hunger Memorial, but it was just too cold. I was afraid to go. But there's a lot of protests coming up. Almost every day there's something. So
I'll keep you informed. Ziad is my contact person. Ziad has also participated in some of your Zoom Palestine programs.
Brooklyn for Peace. What I'd like to organize something. Maybe you can work with me.
Okay.
At Abingdon Square Park by that memorial.
Okay. I'm here until
in.org we can organize something. So let's talk.
I would love to, and I'll be here. Normally I'm supposed to return to France at the end of the month, but I could extend it, but hopefully we can do it in the next 2 weeks. But I'd be willing to work with you on it, Jackie. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Okay, I'm afraid to do it by myself at West Beth.
I'll do it with you.
They're gonna come after me, so
I'll be your bodyguard.
To be
I'll be your thug.
Okay. All right.
Take care. Love you.
Love you too. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye,
Take care,
everybody.
Jackie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.